My name's Lisa. I'm so grateful to have the honor of doing a talk this morning about my favorite subject, which is meditation. I know you can all agree. Yeah. You know, the last song we just did was inspired by the poetry of the 13th century mystic poet Rumi. If you're familiar with the Whirling Dervishes, that's inspired by Rumi. And Rumi was saying there, heart, stop hunting and step into this net. And it's mostly about allowing ourselves to be caught. Let yourself be caught by God. We run and run and run, and we look for all these things outside of ourselves to bring lasting happiness, and it doesn't work. You know, and meditation is the gift that turns all of the senses inward. There are so many parallels from the great religious traditions and the truth teachers from those religious faiths. You know, Jesus Christ is certainly supreme among many of them, as is Lord Krishna, if you're from the East, and Buddha. And they all teach a form of going within, and it's meditation, different forms of meditation. But when Jesus said, "Be still and know that I am God," and when Jesus said things like, "Behold, the temple of God is within you," that's meditation. That's meditation. So Master Teacher Jesus Christ was teaching us these things, and finding these parallels in different philosophies is an encouraging thing, because, you know, Krishna came thousands of years before Jesus came. And Jesus was bringing a whole new light in a very dark time in the evolutionary consciousness of humanity to recharge us with a burst of love. He taught meditation and love for the infinite that seems to be, it's not the white man in the clouds with the beard. You know, we're all kind of on board with that these days. I think anybody still hanging on to that one? If so, I'm sorry if I offended you, I didn't mean to. But, you know, there's more to it than that. It's become all things. So it's impossible that God would just be one form of itself. You know, it doesn't even make sense. But if you're going all the way back to the words Jesus taught us to pray, to go within, you know, the Lord's Prayer, Our Father. The word Father in Aramaic, before it was translated into Arabic, that word means beloved. It doesn't mean male, female, masculine. It's not a gendered word. So in Aramaic, the word they were using meant dear beloved. So it was pulling and requesting with a degree of intensity that we cultivate our own relationship with the infinite source that gives life and meaning to everything that we do. So each one of us is endowed with the apparatus to have direct communion with God. With God. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit today. You know, in the Hindu philosophy, have you ever seen photographs, or not photographs, I suppose, but images of Lord Krishna? Everybody know what Krishna looks like? He's sometimes depicted in a golden chariot, and there's a passenger in the chariot along with him. And sometimes Krishna has hold of these reins with 5 beautifully looking, strong, white horses. Those 5 horses are the 5 senses. So it's the symbolism of reining in the senses. And the chariot he's riding in is the chariot of consciousness. And it's golden. So when you have golden consciousness, you have the consciousness Christ was talking about when he was saying, "These and greater things shall you do." Meditate. Get your consciousness with the infinite, and you can do great things. Many of us have, and great things, you know, what does that mean? Things that inspire others to their own remembering. Like, think of a time when you showed up someplace out of nowhere and just happened to be exactly in the right place at the right time to do something incredible in the life of somebody else, to let them know they're not alone. We all have stories like this. And it's not one of us is born with a particularly special consciousness, and that makes us, you know, we cultivate the consciousness. And even if we love doing a thing, it's kind of tricky. It gets difficult. And then there's the way of, you know, I was raised in the Catholic faith tradition, and I never got with all the fancy prayers they were doing. I didn't understand why they did things in a particular way. It was like, sit, stand, kneel, sit, stand, kneel. And I made it really clear to my parents when I was about 8 or 9 where I could articulate some of what I was onto, but certainly not all of it. But I knew that this wasn't it. I felt like every time I went and participated in that, there was something they were trying to impose between me and my connection to God already. So I was adamant that I would not have that. And so I was pretty willful too. And Eddie guy's laughing, that's an understatement of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you all remember being 13? And how particularly challenging 13 was? Like your body's doing weird things and you feel like your hair is wrong and everything about what we're doing is just not right. So one day when I was 13 years old, I was walking through the game room of our home, and my father, who was not a man of many words, was sitting down there reading. And I happened to walk through, and there were 7 people in a rather small house. So the opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation with anybody was kind of, it didn't happen very much, because there was always somebody else around. But this time, there was just the 2 of us. So he stops me, and he asks me to sit down for a minute. And I thought, well, like, what could this be about, you know? And I know it wouldn't be long because he doesn't talk very much, so I was like, okay, you know. So I sit down and he looks at me and he says, why are you so different than the rest of us? And it's just what you want to hear as a 13-year-old. It's like, I am crazy and weird and my hair is bad. And I just looked at him and I said, you know, what do you mean? And when I looked up at him, his eyes were really gentle, and he was more curious, and it wasn't like a consternation, like trying to shake me to get in line. He really wanted to know. He said, well, why can't you just go to church like the rest of us and be okay with that? What's going on with you? And with I didn't know the fancy words, I didn't know what was going on, I didn't know how to describe it. The best I could describe it was, I feel like I'm close to this thing all the time, I always have. And we call it God, and it just feels like this great big thing that's always with me. It's never separated, and I always feel like it's watching me and knows everything I do, so I don't understand why we have to do that. And he said, okay, well, can you find a way to participate until you don't have to do it anymore that doesn't upset your mother so much? And I thought, well, that's a good point. He's like, you know, if you're connected to this thing and it's all loving and big, and like, can you be a little more loving? Can you just try? Sure, I can try. That's like a reasonable request. It wasn't anything, you know. So what I started to do with that was I realized the thing that I loved to do more than anything in the whole world was sing. In fact, you couldn't get me to stop singing no matter where I was, humming at the dinner table, like no matter where I was singing. So I thought, this is something that speaks to me through the language of my heart. God speaks to me as music. And if I show up with this gift of song, I know I can be okay where I am, and I'd be offering some of the best of what I have to offer. So it started to orient me to a different way of being in the world, focusing more on what I bring to an equation than what's in it for me. Like, this doesn't fill me, so I leave. Well, what if what I can bring can fill the people that are there? And so for the next 20-some years, I was the main cantor of the whole diocese of Pittsburgh. And when big things were happening, I was the one that got the call to come in and do it. I sang 4 masses a weekend, and weddings, and funerals. Sometimes I would get out of school during the week if somebody in particular passed away that had me written in their last will. I would have to go, not have to, I got to. It was like a big honor. So it was a way of, it kind of groomed me to a particular way of being of service that I felt I was a vessel for the infinite, and I was using my gifts to good use. So it turned the whole thing around. Fast forward, 2006. My father and I didn't have that conversation ever again. And I wasn't exactly in line, but I was being of service, so I had taken my participation in that a little bit more seriously. Like, what my voice can do is bring people closer to the connection that I have. I'm down with that, I'm good. And so, 2006, my father is in the last 6 months of his life. And my mom, for 2 hours a day, would go out and drive a van with kids. She would pick up school kids, just one run just to get her out of the house, or go grocery shopping or something like that. So my siblings and I would take turns sitting with my dad, who was bedridden, but sharp as a tack and still able to communicate. And so I'm sitting there with him one afternoon within the last 6 months of his life, and he was becoming particularly agitated, and couldn't figure out exactly why, beside the obvious stuff. There was something more going on with him. And he just looked up at me and he said, do you remember the time when you were 13, when we had that conversation, and I thought, oh God, here it is again. Why are you so different from the rest of us? Like, he still hasn't figured it out. And I said, of course I do. And he said, well, one of the reasons I asked you that question is because I'm different from the rest of us too. And I said, okay, now what do you mean? He said, well, here I am, I'm about to die, and I don't know those fancy prayers. I don't know how to pray. And I'm afraid that once I get there, I'm not going to know what to say or how to say it. I never learned them. And I said, well, I've got some bad news and I got some good news. It's like, I know you saw me make my confirmation when I was 13, but I cheated on that test. I don't know those prayers either. My best friend was like, she memorized them all, and I sat close enough to her and convinced her that she should let me copy them, because my parents would kill me. And so I said, I don't know those fancy prayers either. And I said, Dad, it's not about fancy prayers. It's not about memorizing. Those are just a good start if you need some direction to kind of put things in order for you. But why don't you think of a time when you prayed a prayer or made a statement with every cell in your being, like everything in you, it was all your might. And it was a particular way of feeling that was different from everything else. And you said it to a place or a thing or whatever that you felt was way bigger than you, but you knew you connected to it, and that it heard you and came back with a response, that you got an answer, that you knew for sure you connected to something way bigger than you that was there all the time. Think at the time. And he was quiet for a little bit, and all of a sudden, like a tear just rolled. And he said, I got it. I said, what was that? And it was World War II. He said, I was crossing the Rhine River in one of the little boats with people getting shot out of boats all around me. And I said, if you get me across this river, I know I will live no matter what else happens, and I will go home and have a family someday. That's what he really wanted. Obviously that happened, because here I am. And I said, okay, whatever it is you pray or you say it like that. That's the feeling. That's the juice behind. You can parrot any prayer I can teach you, and you can imitate everybody else. But if you learn from the language of your own heart how to say it, I call it like all your might thinking. All the might that you have, and all the might that you don't even realize you have. Say anything you want to God like that. And there's a particular knowing. How many of you get what I mean? Have experienced it yourself? So it's not our fancy prayers. So meditation, coming back to that, there are 3 things important, I believe, in cultivating a really great meditation practice. And one is reflection, contemplation, and then there's meditation. Meditation is silent meditation with a purpose of attaining God communion. So I'm a big fan of visualization, and I'm also a big fan of, there are certain types of meditations like guided meditations. They're good for a certain thing. Well, when it comes to be still and know that I am God, love the Lord thy God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, and with all your mind. In order to offer something like that, all your heart, you've got to have cultivated a relationship with your heart and really know what's in there. All your strength means to turn off all the sense, Yogananda would call them sense telephones. Things that ring and get our attention and pull us out. All your might means you bring all of the energy when you sit still into the spine and the brain, the altar of consciousness. All your mind, that's a trick. There are some really great meditation, people known for teaching meditation, but some of their methods are a little tricky. Like, how many times have you tried to just sit in meditation and it just says, take a definite time, twice a day, to sit, collect your mind, muster up enough faith to just get still. How many of you have tried this? Is it easy? It's not really easy. There's I hope that's not the one I wanted. I think it is. I didn't memorize this whole thing. But from one of the greatest meditation teachers ever to grace the planet is Paramahansa Yogananda. And he says this: you may control a mad elephant. You may shut the mouth of the bear and the tiger, ride the lion, and play with the cobra. By alchemy, you may learn your livelihood. You may wander through the universe incognito. I love that one. Make vassals of the gods. Be ever youthful. You may walk on water and live in fire. But control of the mind is better and more difficult. Right? Without a technique, it's nearly impossible to really get to a centered state of meditation. And this is where I make the argument of, like, even when you love to do a thing, even something you love, can you keep doing it over and over again? It's like there's a way that it gets tiring. For example, when I was in high school, my friend and I, it was summer vacation, and we decided we were going to be the legends of summer in terms of the ice cream eating zone. We both loved ice cream, and our friends did too. And there was a restaurant in Pittsburgh where I grew up called King's Family Restaurant, and they were famous for their ice cream and their ice cream creations. One of the things they had was tons of fun for everyone. It was 24 scoops of ice cream. We didn't eat that one. But they had this other one. That one seemed like crazy. This was just like 9 scoops of ice cream. And 2 bananas and like 8 toppings and whipped cream and cherries and all this stuff. And so we decided if you ate this, not only did you have bragging rights, but you got a big pin that said, I ate the castle at King's. That's like big time. When you're 14, it's all about that. For us, it was anyway. We were pretty tame kids. But here we are. So we decided to do a practice run the week before. So we went to King's and we split a King's castle. And it comes to your table on a great big, like it's in a great big tub that looks like an ice cream churn. It's wooden and it's huge. And so we split it, ate it. So the following week we tell all our friends, all right, you know, this Thursday evening, this is when we do the King's Castle. Some of them came. But even when you love a thing, it's difficult to keep doing it. So we sit down, order a King's Castle a piece, and the waitress said, do you know how many? Like, yeah, we know. We're here to do this thing. So here she comes back with a tray of like these 2 great big monstrosities of ice cream, just gigantic. And out of the corner of my eye, I see a little girl. She's probably like 7 or 8, sitting in the booth with her parents across from her. And I see her eyes get really big. And I thought, she totally wishes she were me right now. And I just looked at her and smiled, you know, like, yeah, that's right. And she looks at her parents and her eyes get real big and she said, wow, what pigs! Like, child. What do you know? Like, just watch and learn. And so here we go. How is eating ice cream like meditation? I realized that it starts out total opposite, but in the center zone is kind of the same. So first 5 minutes of eating ice cream, pretty good, right? First 5 minutes of meditation, pretty hard, right? If we're being honest, think of the first 5 minutes you ever tried to meditate. Like 2 minutes feels like 20 or 3 hours. I mean, it really does. The next 5 minutes of eating ice cream, so now we're like 10 minutes into eating ice cream. It's still pretty good. It's like really because you're tasting the different scoops they put in there and all that. First 10 minutes of meditation, it's still pretty hard. It's hard to just sit there and have your mind focus on something instead of all the things that keep coming in. But then you get in this middle zone where you start, I call it like the bargaining, negotiating zone. So we're into the ice cream, you know, eating episode, and I look up at my friend Amy and I say, Amy, if I have to eat one more candied walnut, I will be so sick right now. I mean, right here. And she looks at me and she says, okay, you don't have to eat the candied walnuts if I don't have to eat the pineapple chunk topping. Like, deal. Okay, so how is that like meditation? Meditation, you're 7 minutes into it and you wanted to do 15, or you're 5 minutes into it, you wanted to do 10. And when you say, if I stop after 5, I'll do 15 minutes tomorrow, right? Or, I know I'm supposed to sit up straight and keep my spine straight, but if I lie down just a little, like just a little bit, it's still meditation. As long as I don't fall asleep, I've been meditating. So how many of you know this? Like you start to bargain. You just like, right? What constitutes finishing the king's castle? What constitutes meditation? With both, again, the similarities there is even with something that you like, it took a lot of willpower to push through eating all that ice cream. And my point is, eating all that ice cream made us a little sick. You know, we finished it. Only hear it for us. We totally did it. We did it. We walked out of there with our pins. Yeah, what pigs? We did it. Thank you, Aniko, very much. After 2.5 weeks, I lost the pin. After 2.5 weeks of meditation for 10 minutes, you won't lose your peace. It's the thing that keeps accumulating. It keeps accumulating. We did not want ice cream for probably a month. You know, in the dead of summer. You guys want to get some ice cream? No. I don't want ice cream. Thank you so much. After 2.5 weeks of meditation, you want more. You can take more. You can carry more. It's like putting something into your bank account of consciousness that once you do, even if you do a little bit, you never lose it. It will never go away. And the more you do it, the more you want to do it. The more you do it, the better you feel. The more we do I challenge you, any sense pleasure, anything you enjoy doing that involves any of your senses on the physical plane, do that and try meditation. There's no comparison. You can't go, even if you love to garden, after you garden for 8 hours and you go take a shower and sit down, can you get out of the chair as easily as you used to? I can't. So it's like, oh, but if I would have sat still in meditation, all of this energy comes into us. All of this beautiful energy fills us up, and it makes us clear. It keeps us clear. So in the workshop today, we're going to give you we're going to meditate a little bit after, like towards the end of the talk, too, so you can get the sense of how to do it. I don't want to be one to just stand here and talk about meditation. I'd rather us do it together. Is that fair? Okay, so we'll give you a nice meditation posture, you know, and it's a way of tuning into the infinite. It speaks to each one of us in the language of our hearts. And one of my favorite passages in the Bible is Matthew 5:8. Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the pure of heart, they shall see God. And that kind of makes me cry a little bit, like when you think about it. If our job were primarily about, you know, the Sufis say polishing the nafs, polishing the ego, polishing the heart to make it pure and clear. We come into the world and a lot of things are imposed upon us by thoughts and ideas or situations. But at our sacred center, it's always love. It's always clear, it's always perfect. The things that grow out from it are clear and perfect. But the things that are imposed upon it from the outside can sometimes create a way that precludes us from remembering. I'll say it that way. So ours, when we go into meditation, is a tool to help with that remembering. That you, in fact, are a child of God. We all are. Endowed with the apparatus to communicate with infinite source because it's in fact our birthright. It's our divine birthright to stay connected and do the things we do, the way that we do them. Mine happen to be music. I have other gifts too. So do you. We all have one in particular probably, and many. How many of you think you've got more than one pretty amazing thing to share? Oh, come on. Don't be humble. Serious. Yeah, you all do. We all do. Whether we realize it or not is our charge. And so this is what meditation can help you do as well. Just realize you're always connected. Yeah. And it's okay to not be humble when you're doing loving things. Like to recognize, yeah, it's my right to be connected and loved. It's what I came here for. So trust in your own heart, trust in your own consciousness. And I've said this before, it's just my charge and my wish for you today is whether you take the workshop or not, even in this meditation zone we're going to do here, may the blessings of the infinite help in your remembering that you are a spark of the divine creator, charged with that source. And the more you tap into it, the more your remembering gets more clear. That you're it. It's like tag, you're it. You're it. And it can catch every one of us. Hard stop hunting and step into this net. It's like a harsher way of saying it, resistance is futile. You know, it's more fun to participate with it. You have a lot more. And one of the things to remember, like sometimes somebody triggers us. May our reaction be to immediately go within and operate in a response from the center. From the center. Instead of reacting like fire with fire. Somebody triggers me, my first response is I go in. And then I start to operate from soul qualities. And then I also know when to remove myself from a situation that's just not cool. You don't have to stand there and take it. We don't have to do that. So recognizing what's yours to do and what's yours to graciously decline. Thank you so much. No thanks. That's not for me. Right? We get these opportunities probably daily if we think about it, don't we? You know, just in if you just surf television channels, it's yes, no, no, I think I'll read a book. I don't know. But trust in your own consciousness. And another thought that I wanted to share with you too is environment is stronger than willpower. Environment is stronger than willpower. Be always with people who inspire you and surround yourself with the people who lift you up. Surround yourself with the people who lift you up. And for gosh sakes, don't let anyone put anything or any other person between you and your connection to Source. We can all help each other along the way, but we can't become God to each other. We can become an expression of the infinite to each other. And if you need help in finding direction, may you have a loving person in your environment that can just help guide you back to yourself. Remember who you are, right? Who wants to meditate? Who wants some ice cream? All right. Yeah, ice cream. So let's here's a definite meditation posture that we'll just do for a couple minutes together. It's so much easier to get still in a group. There's something about the group consciousness. It's because we're more pieces of the infinite thing itself. And with it clear, where two or more are gathered, there am I in their midst. Here we are. We got way more than two, so this should be good. All right. So we sit with our feet flat on the floor, clearing our laps of anything we might have there, with the exception of our two palms of our hands turned upward at the juncture of the thighs and the abdomen. And when we put them there, we're pulling energy close to the spine. And be as still as you can. This is all your mind. Being still is all your mind. Spine straight, and if you keep your chin parallel to the floor, it kind of opens the back of the neck and head region where your medulla oblongata is. That's right at the top of your spine, where the spine and brain meet. The medulla oblongata actually translates to mean mouth of God. That's where life force was breathed into your being at the moment you were conceived. And it grew everything out from there. Before you were who you are, just it grew your body, and it grew all these things. And then lift your eyes, close your eyes, and just lift the gaze of your eyes gently to the point between the eyebrows. The third eye. The Christ consciousness zone. And if you see light there, that's great. The third eye, this point between the eyebrows, is the seat of all-knowing Christ consciousness. And it's the star. There's a star in the middle of your forehead that's inside that you can actually see. After periods of long meditation, it becomes more obvious. But this is the star the wise men followed. We follow the star of intuition, divine guidance from God. And we all have this. And then following the breath on the inhalation, we're not controlling the breath, we're just following it. As you inhale, mentally chant the word I am. On the exhale, that I am. I am. That I am. And by lifting those eyes up like that into the forehead region, it's impossible to fall asleep while you meditate because you're in the super conscious realm, the Christ consciousness is there. The trick is anytime you notice you're thinking anything except I am, that I am, just gently bring your mind back to the breath, floating I am, that I am. And then just take one breath. And exhale, bringing your consciousness back to the room. Maybe wiggle your toes, feel the backs of your legs on your seat. Hear the trickling water. Behold, the temple of God is within you. Open your eyes when you're ready. Hello. So we invite you to join us this afternoon for a couple other meditation techniques just to really still the mind. Remember that quote? Control of the mind is better and more difficult. It's a challenging thing without tools to just sit there and try to do it. So we invite you to do that. And as Reverend Joanne mentioned, our soul sessions, the next one is September 19th. Join us there. We invite you in the sacred space of meditation, so our last words are meditate and eat ice cream. Thank you.